Okay, I think I got it now. It said recording in progress. Okay, so welcome everyone. We'll start with introductions. Again, my name is Andrea Orest, public health educator for Cook County Public Health, and sort of taking the lead on the healthy housing work within the grant. And let's see, I'm just going to go in order on my screen. Greg, would you like to introduce yourself? And oops, hold on. If you could identify your, oh, actually, yeah, sorry. Greg, if you would like to talk about why you are interested in this meeting and what you hope the group will achieve in your introduction.
Okay, I'm the person without a name on the screen because we can't figure out how to put our name on it yet. Greg Westergaard. I live in Schroeder, lived in Cook County for 4 years now. Obviously the senior of the group. I've talked to Kat about various things. A lot of interest, but one of the things is that way back in Minneapolis, I was very much involved when they were doing housing programs with a community development block grant and looking at how they could use money to improve housing stock and meet needs. And there was a lot of things that were very beneficial to inner city Minneapolis way back then that were good ideas. So now we're in Schroeder, way out on the West End, involved in the community, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Thanks, Greg. Grace, would you like to introduce yourself?
I feel like I kind of did, but maybe it was more about the program than myself. So my name's Grace. I'm working for Cook County in the Public Health and Human Services Department as public health supervisor. So I work with both Andrea and Andrea and Martina as well on the human services side of things. And I'm taking notes today and also trained in on healthy homes assessments along with the other two members of my team here today. I'm just happy to see this project get off the ground and happy to see all of you here.
Thanks. Andrea, are you available to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello. I'm Andrea Tofty, public health educator for County Public Health. And as Grace was mentioning, also was training the healthy home assessment. So, and I'm very excited to see Andrea. This is her project, and excited to see this starting and getting off the ground. So, yeah.
Thank you. I'm putting those questions in the chat. Okay, so let's see. Jason, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I think someone already did, but I'll be redundant. I'm Jason Hale. I'm the Executive Director of the Cook County HRA. Glad to be with you.
Thank you. Let's see. And then Shane?
Hi, Shane Steele, City of Grand Marais Sustainability Coordinator, and I work with energy projects and some stormwater projects for the city. And I guess when we're talking about housing, I'm interested in energy efficiency and electrification as we talk about improving housing.
Thank you. Kat?
Hi, I'm Kat Mayo. I am the Executive Director for the Cook County Local Energy Project, a small local nonprofit based out of Grand Marais. And we focus a lot on energy efficiency, renewable energy, climate solutions for our community. We really want to help make the push for reducing our carbon emissions and uniting our community behind that with a lot of community outreach and education. So yeah, I'm, really here to help support however I can. Really like to see improving our housing stock and making it a healthier environment for people to live in with their homes. And yeah, just more energy efficiency and beneficial electrification for those homes and for future new homes for our community.
Thank you. Amy? Can you, are you able to unmute?
3 words. 1 word.
Working on it. It's a movie. Would you like us to come back?
No,
Oh, thank you.
because
job.
I guess along with using the laptop, the mouse just also is, so it's a whole new thing for me to learn. Along with, I'm Amy Rennie. I am the Homeless and Basic Needs Coordinator or Case Manager for AEOA for Cook and Lake counties. I have been in the job for about 6 weeks now, and it's really not where I've been. I started my career a long time ago in housing and homelessness, but I'm back into it after a long period out. So I'm really interested in supporting this grant. I feel like I have a lot to learn, so I'm going to learn on your backs, hopefully, as I become a contributing member of this committee. But it's very exciting to hear about creating, building efficiencies, because what I've learned in the short time that I've been here is we need all of it. There's not enough right now for those of us who are here. So the more we can improve what we have along with getting new, I think is where healthy and thriving is going to come from. But anyway, I'm excited to be a part of this. I think I was defaulted as a member because Mary Franz left. So I hope that you don't decide that you don't want, and I'm just teasing. No, I was really excited for Mary to share this with me and to be a member of this group. It's very exciting.
Thanks, Amy. We're glad to have you. Martina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Martina Johnson. I'm the Adult and Home and Community-Based Services Supervisor at Cook County Public Health and Human Services. And I am really interested in being here just because I appreciate any opportunity to collaborate. Over the years, things that I've seen as a social worker and a supervisor is that while people may have housing, that housing isn't necessarily safe and is not necessarily a healthy environment for people. And there's a lot of needs that are not being addressed. Either people don't have the funds to afford to make improvements, or they live in a rental unit that is not being kept to safe standards. So I'm just really interested in this group maybe achieving just like a community standard of what is acceptable for the community and what is acceptable for people that may not have the voice to advocate for themselves.
Excellent. Thanks, Martina. Jackie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jackie Kozlowski. I am the Director of Human Services in Grand Portage. And I'm here, just like Martina, just to help our people and help get this. We need housing, and we need reliable, dependable housing, affordable housing for all of our people. So countywide, so that's something that I'm really looking forward to working with you with.
Sorry, quick note, Andrea. I don't want to know. Jackie, I'd love to connect with you about that sometime. So I'm going to put my email in the chat here. If you want to reach out anytime to talk about housing needs in Grand Portage, I'd love to hear about it.
Great, thank you.
Excellent. See, we're already building. Thank you, Jackie. Julie, would you like to introduce yourself?
I would. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I think many of you I've met, but there's some new faces, so it's nice. I am the Executive Director at Care Partners of Cook County. So I am bringing in the lens of the older adults in our community and the aging, not only the older adults, but also kind of the crisis we're finding ourselves in healthcare and the potential of people that need to be finding care, still being in their homes, and some of those type of safety issues as well. But definitely bringing in that segment and lens. I will say I'm a social worker by trade, and I have a brief time where I was on the Minnesota Housing Coalition in the Twin Cities. I was representing an organization in the Twin Cities. So I have a little bit of experience in some of the housing funding and different things as it goes in legislature and things like that. But pretty much like Amy, housing is not necessarily my experience, but I bring in the lens that of what we're seeing in Cook County with older adults and of course workers needed or lack thereof. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks, Julie. I think that's everyone. So if I missed you, call out right now. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you all very much. I'm glad that you're all here. So the next item on the agenda is to discuss and revise, if needed, a proposed mission for our grant project. And you can provide any input. I know that mission statement planning is a long and drawn out process. So we can spend a little bit of time looking at it right now, and then, we can revisit it as, missions are always an ongoing work in progress. So I can paste it into the chat here, and then I'll read it. I could use like 3 more computer screens right now. Okay. All right, so the Cook County Healthy Homes Network builds on the established capacity and expertise of current local programs to improve the health and quality of life of all residents by compiling and providing educational resources to reduce common housing related hazards. And I added and financial resources in there as a question mark, because I feel like that is also a resource that we will probably come up with. So feel free to read that again. And if you have any direct input right away, I would love to take it.
Well, I just want to comment, Andrea, that it's a really great mission, because as somebody kind of stepping in here and not super involved, this helped zone in already for me of what this group is focusing on, and not getting in the weeds of some of the housing issues per se, but more the health of the homes. So in that regard, it's a good statement. It helped clarify for me already. So thank you.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Question about the possibility of adding in financial. Do we have financial resources from this grant to hand out, or why was that a question? Yeah,
well, we do have financial resources in the grant for income eligible households. And it was more a question of how the language would fit in, I guess, in my thought was, because there are financial resources available in our community, I'm sure. I don't know what all of them are, and maybe there are not as much in other areas, but the question, I guess, was more of how the language would fit in there.
I think we should have it in there, because I think part of it is, we have this grant, it goes until next June, and we're hoping that if we show that the grant is really meeting people's needs and identifying unmet needs in the community, that we can get continued funding and we can continue to apply for funding. And I think that financial component is key, because the reason that a lot of those hazards exist is that people don't have the resources to address them. So I think we also want to make this part of what's further on in the agenda with the service map, is so that when we go to a house, we have a very clear sense of all the different types of resources we could bring to a situation. Like if we go into a home and there's just multiple areas that could be addressed. We're not going to be able to address them all, but maybe, Amy at AEOA has some resources. Maybe local energy project has some connection to energy efficiency resources with things like weatherization. Whatever is out there, I want to make sure we know about it so that we can connect people to it. And if there really isn't that much, then maybe that's something we can work together with the HRA on trying to pin down in terms of finding other financial support services out there that we can bring to the community.
And I don't want to drag us down the financial path, but AEOA does have some financial resources. I think the hardest part about AEOA, from my perspective of being a new person, is it's siloed. So I may have access to funds that may not help us here, but through my participation, I might be able to pull in information or maybe another resource, human resource, to help us. So I think that the more specific it's hard. You don't want your mission to be all kinds of words. But I do think that specificity when it comes especially to financial is just a key for people when they look at a mission or a vision. So I would be supportive of putting it in there.
I think you've also done a nice job, Andrea and your team on starting this in adding in the language that says you're compiling and providing educational fund. So you're not necessarily always providing, but you're compiling the resources, and that would include then AEO and others that might have funding. So that kind of helps broaden that a little bit. So yes, there's some that we provided, but we also compile the resources.
Just quick to dovetail what Julie said, two quick things and one point of clarification. Public health folks, are you thinking about, like when you're compiling the resources, are you thinking about being the place where that, like maybe a menu of those resources lives? Like, is that something you're going to hold and then we can direct people like, hey, actually public health is a great list of options or something like that? And of course, the HR would be happy to also have that list, so if they go to either entity, they can say, hey, here's the sort of comprehensive list of what we know of. Is that what you're anticipating doing, or what are you thinking in that space? And then second quick is, I also think maybe the group would be interested at some point in this meeting. We had closed our survey, the rehab survey that the HRA had initiated, and I have some kind of summary results, charts that I could quick pull up and share with the group to show what the biggest needs are identified by the respondents, if that's of interest.
Short answer is yes and yes. We, so compiling that sort of service map of resources to share out in the community with the whole community, similar to Public Health and Human Services has a very similar, compilation of resources already. So it would be something similar to that. So we could share it with people and they could look at it and say, okay, this is my need. Which area or which organization can I reach out to see if they can help me?
That's so excellent, because it's a link we would also put in our Aging Well resources. That coalition, the Aging Coalition has the Aging Well resources for people locally to find resources, and we have a housing link. So that would be a nice place as well to get that out, Andrea.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think a lot of us could share it far and wide. I think the only, not reservation, I have a question is making sure that it's clear that who owns that in the sense of updating that and maintaining that, because otherwise those things can change every year, depending on funding cycles. So I just want to make sure that that's out there, that we understand who's going to be doing that process so we can keep it current.
Right, keep it up to date. I agree. Yeah, and there would be, in the creation of the service map, I think the logical thing would be to outline that information. And I'm just going to say that it's probably going to live with us.
Yeah, it's fine for it to live with public health. But we're going to rely on all of you to help us keep it up to date, because we won't necessarily know about all the new resources that come up. So that's part of why we're glad you're all here.
All right, let's see. So does anyone else have any other input on the present draft of the mission statement besides what we already talked about? Beautiful. Well, then I am going to do a little bit of updating, and I will send it out with the notes. Okay, so let's see, we are at halfway, so we're looking pretty good here. The next couple things is a discussion of the sort of processes and documents that we have for the healthy housing process. So let's see. I am going to so I guess I'm going to give a sort of brief rundown on the process that we created for you know, essentially being invited into somebody's house to do the assessment. So our first step is either going to be a referral or a request from a household. So a referral could come from any agency, Public Health and Human Services. It could come from Care Partners. I mean, essentially any agency. If they are speaking with someone who's interested in having the assessment completed, and then also, you know, people reaching out if they hear about it and are interested, or I should say when they hear about it and are interested. You know, the important thing is that we're being invited into their home. And then once that initiation happens, we have an intake form that I created that sort of outlines, you know, it gathers their information if they're an owner or a renter, you know, their address and their phone number and their email, and then a list of questions that, like an initial sort of screening list of questions. And I can share my screen for a minute here. And after the meeting, when I send out the recording, I'll include a copy of all of these documents for you to look over more in depth, so you can take time to really look at it. But so it has, you know, their contact information and if there was a specific reason for their referral. And then down at the bottom is this initial phone survey question. So before we go to somebody's house, we have an idea of, you know, what possible hazards they might have, and then if they have anything to add. And then part of the assessment process includes taking photos. So make sure that they're aware and they are okay with that, because when we do the assessment report, we include photos of the hazards for them to, you know, have that visual reminder. So that is a very brief run through of the referral. Once the referral part happens and we schedule the assessment, we would go to their house. And the assessment itself is quite lengthy. I'm just going to say, stop me if you have any questions or want to see something again. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep going. This is only my second time presenting this, so I'm a little nervous. So, so the assessment itself is, let's see, share. My kid's school's calling. That's always a good sign. All right, so the assessment itself, I'm just going to scroll down to where the actual assessment starts. This is all sort of intake information and the pre-survey. But the assessment itself is broken down by area. And then, okay. And then, once we get to certain areas, most of the areas, you know, we're looking for a lot of the same things. Is there visible condensation or broken windows, improperly sealed doors? Is there mold or musty odors, water damage, pests, any chipping or peeling paint? We have the capacity to do a lead test on any chipping or peeling paint if we need to. We're looking for uneven floors, any structural hazards that might be there. Extension cords, window blind cords, if families need child tamper resistant outlet covers or cabinet latches for child proofing. We have those available as well. We check for lighting. Do the windows and the doors open appropriately? And then at the end of each section is an additional list of questions that is specific to homes that for elders in our community. And, you know, that can sort of make sure that they have the ability to access, you know, the areas in their home safely. And now, most of the rooms are the same, so I'm going to skip down. Sorry if my screen scrolling is nauseating. It's a long assessment. Okay. So other things, once we get through the rooms themselves, I went too far. We have an additional section for elder checklist questions and that, you know, didn't really fit into like the room by room assessment. And then we look for dehumidifiers if people need them. Do the bathrooms have working exhaust fans? Is there a pest mitigation system in place or do they need one? We check for smoke detectors in the appropriate places, fire extinguishers, a fire escape plan, CO alarms, proper lighting, railings of, you know, patios and decks, and then unvented combustion appliances. So we can, you know, talk through if people have, you know, any of these appliances to look at if they're, you know, vented to the outside or not, and we have a way to sort of test that they're working. The clothes dryer, evidence of smoking, storage of pesticides, cleaning supplies, and medications stored out of reach. Stair gates, we check for water temperature, the thermostat, and then part of the assessment planning process, I met with Elsa Lundy, the FireWise coordinator, and was able to get some sort of basic information from her on what she would look for, you know, sort of what she calls the low-hanging fruit, you know, things that are easy to assess when you're somewhere. So the first thing actually was at the top of the assessment. When you pull in the driveway, you know, I look for the fire number to make sure that it's visible and that the driveway has enough space for emergency vehicles to enter. And then assessing the defensible space around a home, and then looking for open soffits or areas that, you know, if there is a fire nearby, that embers could get into and start the house on fire. Any visible concerns in siding, shingles, drainage, or grading? And then we have an annual maintenance and safe home documents that we can provide to homeowners and renters so they can sort of keep up on, you know, what to do and when. And then other information, and then other things that we can either provide or help them find resources for. We can help do well testing and radon testing, and the bonus about those two things is that, you know, that's something that we can do right when we're there doing the assessment, so they don't have to worry about doing it themselves and taking it in. We can also do the lead testing. We can talk about any septic concerns. We have a separate checklist for child-proofing if people need it, and then a fall prevention and aging at home checklist. a lot of that checklist is built into this assessment already, but there are additional items on there if, you know, if it seems that this stuff covered in this assessment, you know, if it needs to be more comprehensive, then we have that additional one. And then we also have a hoarding questionnaire resource. And then we also have Firewise as a resource.
Super thorough. I just have to comment, Andrea, this is super thorough. Nice.
Thank you. It was a very fast share. So does anybody want to ask any specific questions about the assessment itself before you get a chance to review the documents yourself, Jason?
Yeah, quick. Again, this is great. Thank you. I'd rather have too much as far as like having content that people can look at for cues than not have enough things to trigger people's like thoughts while they're doing it. So my question is, who do you anticipate doing these assessments, and is there going to be some sort of assessment training with the folks that are going to these houses? Because there's a lot, obviously there are a lot of things to consider when you're going into these spaces, and there are going to be some things that are obvious and some things not so obvious. So I just would want to manage expectations for people who like invite you into their home. How long is this going to take? Is this an hour and a half? Is this 30 minutes? That sort of thing.
Yeah, that's actually a good question because I skipped that step. So, so I'll answer that question first. Part of the intake process is I have a document that is called, I don't have it pulled up here. It's a sense like a consumer guide to the Healthy Homes Assessment. So after I set up the assessment and do the intake survey, I would send them this document that walks through all of the things that we will look at and gives them information to sort of prepare themselves before we show up. And that when I send out the documents to the group, I'll include that one as well. And for your first question, the trained assessors are Grace, Andrea, and myself. So we went through a 2-day Healthy Homes assessment training through Sustainable Resources, and then part of the process was creating this assessment based off of multiple other assessments, but also ensuring that it fits our community and that it's at a capacity that we are, you know, qualified to assess. I mean, there are going to be things that, you know, when I go into a home, I might not exactly know, but I could say, you know, it appears that this, you know, that this should be checked or something like that. You know, I'm not a grading expert or anything like that.
Right.
But if there's something extremely obvious, then I can note that. And when we get to the example of the assessment report, I can show you a place, if I can find it, I can show you a place where I made a comment about how, you know, I'm not sure, but you need to assess, you know, you might need to look into this or something like that. Does that answer your questions?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. And just a quick follow-up to that. Are you, as people are like voluntarily, I don't know, signing up for this, however that mechanism is, applying to be a part of the program, are you considering, or have you considered getting their permission to take some photos of problematic things? Because often, so
Yep.
like I used to do county assessment, and it was really helpful to be able to take photos because you could go back and then look it up if you didn't know. So just, it sounds like you're already
Yeah.
on that track, taking photos of things.
Yep.
And
Yeah, and that's part of the intake form. I actually just added the other day, you know, that statement of part of the process will include taking photos, and are you okay with that? So that way,
Okay.
when they get their assessment report, you know, there will be a photograph of that hazard and that will match. So I will, I'll show you that next. I don't have
Terrific.
photos. I don't have photos in the example.
Okay.
But there is a place for them.
Obvious question. Obviously, you're on top of it. I just in case
No,
in the rare event you
sure.
didn't, you know, it's
You
good to
never
get their
know.
permission, and you never know.
Yeah.
And
Right.
just as an aside, if you run into, if I can be helpful, if you run into some obscure issues, I've renovated about 7 houses. I've seen a lot of weird stuff. So if you run into something that you're like, huh, what is this? Feel free to send it my way. If you can't get someone else to weigh in, I might be able to find something. So for whatever that's worth.
That's great. That's worth a lot. Thank you.
Andrea, can I ask a question about, and maybe you
Yes.
scrolled through it. Is there anywhere where you look at the home's heating system and assess if it's working properly, or HVAC system, if that's ventilating properly, anything like that? I'm always gonna be bringing us back to energy and
Yes.
heating. So that'll be
Yeah,
always my
that's
lens
great.
I come through
Thank
here with.
you. Yeah, so we do the exhaust fan and the combustion appliance ventilation checks. But as far as the heating system, like I said before, you know, I can only look at things that I'm qualified for.
Mhm.
If people are having concerns with their furnace, you know, that would be one of those things that I could look to that resource map that we create to point people in the right direction. And you know, if they are having furnace concerns and they are eligible for the mitigation dollars, that might be something that, you know, they can use that towards. But you know, I'm not a qualified furnace assessment person. I can't even assess my own.
Sure, but yeah, if we've got this resource,
Yeah.
maybe even just a photo of the furnace, and then someone who's qualified could look at the photo and know whether or not this is an older unit or this is something that would be good for replacement. Another thing that I don't want to like get too involved as you're just kind of showing us these materials, but you know, if we're talking about income qualified folks, there are a lot of things that we could do to help them save money on their energy bills, you know, LED light bulbs. And if we've got someone in the home who's already kind of poking around and noticing, oh, you know, they don't have any LEDs, or they don't have fresh like filters in their ducts and stuff. These are things that we could help save money on their energy bills, and if we're already in their homes. But
Yeah, that's great.
And yeah,
Thanks.
this tie in very well to the health of the home too for people. I mean, lighting really affects people's health, but also just the air quality is a big thing inside homes for the long term. And then the efficiency of those appliances, or, you know, your systems. So all that's really interconnected.
Thanks. I'm just writing this down as fast as I can.
I
I
have,
guess this is recorded, so
I
go ahead, Greg.
have something that might be of interest to the group. We have an older home in transition. A lot of the things on your list are issues here and things that have been done. I offer our house as a training area. If you want, you could have the whole crew or anyone come in, just spend your time going through, taking pictures, just seeing how the survey works on an actual home that has some of these. And you could, I mean, theoretically, the whole crew could come if they see it or whatever, but to look at issues like accessibility, so I offer that. We have a house that hopefully will be here for a few more years, but you never know when you're seniors. But it's my view is that the house, we are caretakers of a house. The house is going to be here after us, and our obligation is to preserve the house for the next people, which may be some of you. So I offer our house for whatever, however people could think it'd be used, from going through with videos, from pictures, from looking. And there were so many things on your list, good and bad, that I can see in this house that might be just excellent examples, from a good sewer system to electric heating, all of that. So there's an offer that is free for any or all of you to take up on. We're way out in the West End, so you'd have to come down to Schroeder and make a stop at the Schroeder Bakery, but that's a hardship.
That's great. Thanks, Greg. The more practice, the better is what I've learned. Every time we do a practice, I change the form. All right, let's see. I'm gonna show you really quick a copy of the assessment report. If I can find it, let's see.
Andrea, I apologize if you mentioned this already, but just curious if there's some sort of disclaimer to say that you're not a professional inspector, so if something is missed, do you understand what I'm trying to say? I just don't want,
Yes.
you
I
have
do.
you're qualified to do this and you've had training to do this inspection, but it's not such that, you know, if an accident does end up occurring in their home, that you would be responsible for that.
Excellent. It's just a good liability addition there. That's nice, Martina.
Right. I feel like that's in there, but now that you say that, I'm going to double check. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Why do I have so many things? Okay, here we go. All right, so this is, I'm just going to show you a couple pages of this assessment report, just to sort of share a couple things. And then, like I said, I'll send it to you and you can look at, you know, you can look it over more thoroughly after I send it out. So the first page has a photo of their home and their information. The second page is an introduction that talks about, you know, the preliminary information. It talks about the hazards, the hazard categories, and then what the report includes, as well as some next step information for the resident. And so at the next page is a sort of at a glance assessment report card, so they can, you know, sort of look at the report card and see, you know, what areas you know, they don't need to worry about versus what areas are you know, more important to look at sooner than later. And all of that is based on the information that we put into the rest of the assessment. So the first page that the first page of information that they receive about their home is kudos and, you know, things that they're doing well in their home. And then each page has this column right here for photos of those areas so they can see it. So anything in the house that is, you know, that they're doing really well is first. And then the next pages walk through the categories and the hazards, and then an action. And actually, this is an old draft. Like I said, every time I do one, I change the forms. In the updated form, it has the actions, and then underneath the actions is resources. So I can put, besides the action, I can put resources to that action, whether it's educational materials that we provide or other resources in the community. So each area, it just goes through each area based off of their assessment. So I'm not going to scroll through the whole thing in the interest of everyone's time. But when you receive all the materials, you can look them over. And like I'm open to any feedback that you might have based on, you know, what you look at after you see it. So an even shorter introduction to that form. Does anybody have any input or questions right away on that 30-second introduction to that assessment form? Seemed kind of short, but
Looks great off the cuff. Would have to take a deeper look at it and just think through a little bit.
Yeah, and I would appreciate that. Thanks. All right. So we already talked briefly. We have about 7 minutes, so I don't want to talk. I want to give you all an opportunity to have that 7 minutes instead of just listening to me. But we already briefly talked about the creation of the service map of available housing support resources. And that will be, you know, something that we continue to build on as we go. So
Andrea, can I keep us back at the report just for like 30 seconds?
of course you can.
So after the person gets the report, the idea is Andrea or myself would sit down with the person who's, you know, had the report completed about their property and go through the report card. And if they're income eligible, and we're still kind of figuring out what that means, we want to provide some parameters so that there's not people kind of taking advantage of the situation, but we also don't want the parameters to be like a barrier. So we talked about enrollment in other public assistance programs or participation in free and reduced lunch, and using those income eligibility guidelines as a guide. So if someone's eligible for mitigation dollars, we have the ability to spend up to $750 until we expend all of our grant funds. So we wrote into the grant that we'd be piloting this with 20 people using up to $750. And then going through the report, it would also be a conversation of, okay, here's the areas that need immediate attention. Maybe, you know, hopefully we'd be able to address most of them with the funds that are available. But if not, then that individual could prioritize. This is really the major concern I have within all of the like needs immediate attention kind of findings of the report. So that's what would happen next. There would be that ability to go through and do some of the mitigation, and some of the things that are real simple fixes. We have materials, and when Andrea would go back out, she could just provide them. Like she could bring smoke detectors or fire extinguishers or electrical outlet covers or something like that. Whereas if it's a bigger project, that would be more of a process. So, and then there's some follow-up afterwards just to ensure that things are going well. That's in a nutshell kind of what happens after the assessment.
Thanks, Grace. I skipped over all of that. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
And-
that's an important piece, right? That's
Yeah,
part
I agree.
someone might want to participate.
Yeah, and the it's one of the documents that I'll send out will have that follow-up form on there, or a current draft of the follow-up form. I'm still working on it, but I'll send the current draft out to the group. And it also includes the follow-up after the assessment, and then a 6-month follow-up as portion as well. So in our last 3 minutes, 2 questions in 3 minutes. Is there anything that you would like to see as standing agenda items? And then would you like to continue to meet via Zoom, or should we shoot for in-person? And sort of what are your initial thoughts on those items? Go.
Greg has a thought.
Well, I really like in-person meetings. There's so much that can be done with people face to face. And I know we're dealing with you're a very busy group of people with a lot on your agendas. But if we can get together and deal face to face, it's an advantage for all of us just to see and feel what all we have to say. So, and if there's a possibility for in-person meetings, I'm for that.
Excellent. Thanks, Greg. Anyone else have any strong feelings?
If it's possible to do an in-person with a virtual option, obviously that's ideal. If we can't do both.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I'm not always I wouldn't always be able to get to an in-person, but jumping on Zoom is from wherever I'm
Yeah.
at. So the option of having it available, but I agree with Greg, in person is nice when we're able to do it. It's wonderful.
Perfect.
As far as standing meeting items, oh, sorry, Shane, were you going to say something? You look, oh, okay. As far as standing meeting items, maybe just, or agenda items rather, just having sort of check-ins about how this process is going and like whether or not you started it, and maybe
Yeah.
just even updates on how that program rollout is going. Speaking of which, quickly, do you want me to, I have a list of the folks who responded to the survey who gave me their email addresses, who would be interested in being contacted if there's programs available for them to consider. And there might be some overlap there for sure. So I'm happy to send that to you,
Yeah, that would
the
be
list of
great.
folks. Okay, should I send it to you then, or
Yeah.
who? Okay.
Yep. Thanks.
I'd like to hear maybe at the next meeting more about the results of that survey as well, Jason.
Sure.
Yep. All right, so the next difficult task is finding the regular day and time that meets for all of us. So I think what I'm going to do is put together some options via a Doodle poll. Is that what Doodle does? Mix them up. Doodle. And we can sort of see what days and times. Hopefully we can get everyone. That would be the best, at least as a general availability. Obviously, things will come up here and there, but if people are generally available at a certain time, we can do it that way and do a hybrid virtual and in-person option.
Can you remind me, or what is the window for the grant, the implementation period?
Well, our implementation period goes through the end of June of 2023. But our hope is that, we'll be able to have this strong program established and, be able to continue it. And, the future of this group beyond the grant period will really be up to all of us together as a group and, what we want to keep building on or not, or, we'll just grow together as a group.
I guess your question about frequency then is how often we should meet. How helpful do you think we can be, and how much feedback do you want from us as you're implementing?
Well, my initial proposal was once a month, but if that seems like too much, we can definitely, well, maybe I'll just say, does once a month seem too overwhelming to anyone? No.
I think for this, anything less than that, we would lose some traction, or we would lose a little
Yeah.
bit as committee members here. So.
Perfect. All right, thanks. Yeah, and anything you offer at this point is helpful. So that's the answer to that.
Andrea, can you just speak to what, I know we're over here, can you speak to when this might be available to make a referral?
Well, you can send if somebody's interested, you can give them my information or send them their information to me if they're open to being, having me call them anytime. We are really hoping that we'll be up and running before the end of the month. Like every time I feel like I'm so close and I'm so close, but really we are so close. So
yeah, we're hoping to get feedback on the documents that Andrea will send as an attachment, most of which you ran through today. And we're still working on that, like how to do income eligibility for the project, because it's not prescribed for us. We just have to be good stewards of the funds, which is great, but it also puts the onus on us to create a system. And so as soon as we get feedback from the group, we're pretty much ready to go here.
Grace, is the income eligibility question, that's for the $750 per house max. Does that also, would that preclude people who don't qualify for income eligibility from getting the assessment period?
No.
So anyone could get the assessment, but you can only spend
What
that.
we have to work out is how many assessments is it realistic for us with our staffing to complete in a week? And having only done 2 test runs and gone through like creating 1 test report, that's a bit of, I'm thinking I'm thinking probably like 2 in a week right now is my best guess that for what we could accomplish. We just don't have that many people working on the project. So my hesitation in how to launch the project is that I want to temper expectations that, yeah, we're happy to do the assessments, but if we suddenly get an influx of people, we're gonna have to manage our own time with the other projects that we're working on in the team.
Thanks, Grace. Okay, well, we're 4 minutes over. Does anybody have any last things to share? Well, thank you all very much. I really appreciate your participation, and I will send an email out with the documents, the recording for those that were not able to make it, and I will send that out. And if you have any input on any of the documents, please just send it back and let me know.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Thanks for your work.
Thanks, Greg.